I need to change my focus in life. We started a nonprofit, which is now called Fix It Forward Ministry. I was going to have to leave Microsoft and go run this nonprofit full time. It also was a game changer for me when I realized I need to stop doing this. Our nonprofit goal is we're actually trying to give away 3 cars per week right now. Our other question that we really focus on is this car going to be life-changing for them? I just didn't get that purpose of making a big impact.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Lift Your Shop podcast. I'm Kelsey Altram with Lift Auto Repair Marketing, and we have another amazing guest today. We have Matt Carlson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so Matt, for those of you that don't know, he runs 4 locations up in North Dakota in the Fargo area of Fix It Forward Auto Care. But more importantly, he runs an amazing nonprofit called Fix It Forward Ministry. So I'm really, really looking forward to digging in deep today and understanding kind of why you started both. But again, thank you so much for being here today, Matt.
I love it. I'm excited. Yeah.
So to get things started, I mean, why don't we talk about your story a little bit, kind of how your story, I guess, into falling into auto repair is a lot different than most. I'd love to hear kind of just, again, how things started and kind of how it fell into place for you.
Yeah, most people I talk to own auto shops, they start by, they were a technician or they were a service advisor and decided they wanted to be an owner. That's not where I started. I didn't actually come from the industry. So I was a software developer by trade. I worked for Microsoft for 15 years writing software. I wrote accounting software. But while I was a software developer, I really love cars. And so I've always had this car passion. And so I would, I'm a hobbyist. I would fix cars, buy old cars and fix them up. Maybe I'd flip the cars or I'd buy classics and make them drivable again, stuff like that. And I really enjoy just playing with old cars. I love fast cars. I love classic cars. I love big trucks. And it's just been a passion of mine. And so, I ended up, of course, hanging out with a lot of friends that have the same passion. We love cars and it's fun. And my dad also loves cars. And so he's got a big car collection. So I just kind of grew up in this. But then I started thinking after a while, like, how many cars does one person need? Because I'd buy these cars, I'd fix them up and I'd put them in a shed. And then pretty soon my shed would get full. So I build another shed. I live on a farm in the country. And so I build a second shed. And I thought, well, how many cars does one person need? And I don't know what that number is, but when I figure it out, I'll tell you. But I started thinking maybe we could use this passion of fixing cars for maybe something more valuable. And I was talking with a friend and who's now my co-founder on the nonprofit side. And I said, I think it'd be really cool to be able to there's a lot of people who can't afford to fix their cars. And because their car's broken, they lose their job. And when they lose their job, they lose their place to stay and their whole lives fall apart for a relatively simple car repair. A lot of times it's just, a bad battery or a starter or something like that really isn't that expensive or that hard. Mm-hmm. And so I was talking to him about it and he thought it was kind of a cool idea. So while I was working at Microsoft, we started a nonprofit, which is now called Fix It Forward Ministry, where we would go in, and what we started with was the local women's shelter, and we would go to their shelter, and they'd tell us about somebody who's got a car with a problem. We'd take the car, bring it to our shop, fix the problems, bring it back fixed, and just not charge them for it. And they said, when we talked to the local women's shelter, they said that transportation was the #1 barrier to independence for the people staying there. Like the biggest problem they had, they were working with them, they were counseling them, they were giving them job training, they were, giving them, financial training, they were giving them housing, they're working with all these pieces, but they just couldn't get past this transportation issue. And so then we come in and fix the car for them. And, so that worked pretty good. So we started working with a couple other organizations, and we just get it together a couple times a month on a Saturday morning, fix some cars, and it worked really good. And so, of course, once we started doing that, it kept growing. We found more people that needed their cars repaired. More people heard about what we were doing and said, "Hey, that sounds like fun." So they kind of gathered together. And like I said, I lived on a farm and I had a shop that I used for restoring cars, and so they'd come out to my farm and we'd fix cars. And then eventually some people started giving us some cars and say, "Hey, fix this up and you can give it to somebody else." And so we started donating cars to people who maybe their car wasn't repairable or they didn't even have something to start with. So that was where the whole core of the passion of this came from, all while I was working a day job as a software engineer.
Man, that is amazing. Such a unique story, but I love kind of how you turn your passion into so much service. I mean, obviously within the auto repair industry, it's a lot of service. You're constantly fixing people's cars, but in the sense of service where like, hey, you're making a humongous impact and difference and not seeking any monetary value on the end of it in terms of, hey, we're just trying to help people get back on the road, get back on their lives, not deroot themselves. So I love kind of what you did. But then obviously now the nonprofit is rolling, but then what took place in terms of then branching off and then starting your own shop?
Right. So what happened was, I'll tell you a story. I I used to carry a cell phone with me for the nonprofit. So when people wanted to get a hold of us, I had a phone. I had the phone at work, and this lady called me up and she said, "Hey, I need my car fixed." And she told me some details, and I said, "Yeah, we should be able to do that." But we're a nonprofit, we're volunteers, so it's probably gonna be about 6 weeks till we'll be able to get to your car because we had a backlog.
Mm,
And she said, 6 weeks, I can't wait that long. And I said, well, everybody says that, right? Everybody wants their car fixed now.
yeah.
And so I asked her why, assuming she's going to tell me, well, I got to get my kids to daycare, or I have to get to work or something. And she told me that she'd just been contacted by the local sheriff's department and her abusive ex was going to be getting out of prison shortly. And they need to get her and her kids out of the state before he got out. And I was just dumbfounded. And she's like, she's been working with the local YWCA, the local women's shelter, and another shelter that helps battered women. And they put together a plan for moving her across the country somewhere, but they didn't have a vehicle for her to drive. And she had a vehicle, it just wasn't running. And I was just like completely like blown away by this. Like, wow, like, okay, that was a great reason. And so I said, okay, never mind. I'm going to come tonight and I'm going to pick up your car and we're going to bring it out to the shop and see what we can do. Um, and we kind of did some reprioritization on that one. But then what happened was I had to go back to my desk at work because I was still at Microsoft, and I sat down and my current task that afternoon was this crazy trivial thing where I had to fix a typo in some obscure error message in buried deep in the software that nobody ever looks at.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there having to go through all this process that they have to make sure that you check in all the code right and it gets built properly, for something that made no difference in the world, knowing that I had the opportunity and the ability to change somebody's life in a huge way. And that was the day I decided that I needed to have a job with more purpose. And working at Microsoft doing software development wasn't a bad job, but I was a very small cog in a very big gear. And so I just didn't get that purpose of making a big impact. And so that's when I decided that I was going to have to leave Microsoft and go run this nonprofit full time. And what the ending of that story is, this lady had it was a Dodge Dakota with over 300,000 miles on it. And somebody had tried to help her and they pulled the intake off and they broke a bunch of bolts. And, I towed it out there. We put it back together, got it running again. The rear end was howling, like it was leaking out of everywhere. All the suspension was loose, and there was no way she's going to drive that thing across the country. Plus, it was a Dodge Dakota, and she had to have multiple child seats in the vehicle. It wasn't even big enough for her family anyway. So we gave her a Dakota back. I think she sent that off with family, and we actually gave her a much more practical sedan that would be safe enough. And she did, because of that car, they were able to execute the plan, and she did leave our community before this abusive ex got out. So we were able to help her in that 2 week time frame that she had. But it also was a game changer for me when I realized I need to stop doing this. I need to move into just full time. But that time I was just doing the full time nonprofit thing. So then I started really putting my effort into the nonprofit. I left Microsoft just to run the nonprofit full time.
Mhm.
And my wife had a decent job, so we decided to go to single income. And I did that for about a year, and we just started growing the nonprofit and growing the nonprofit. And that's when we really got into the car giveaway stuff. And it was working really well, except for we ran into this problem where we ran out of space. My shop just wasn't big enough. We didn't have any place to park cars other than my farm. And I'd have, like, at one Christmas, I had a dozen donated cars sitting at my farm. And in North Dakota, if you've got a dozen cars sitting there now in the winter, you've got a dozen snow piles, right? So this was a huge problem. And then the other problem we had was the way we had organized, we weren't insurable. Insurance out for auto repair, the garage keepers, they base it on how many certified techs that you have working for you and what your monthly revenue is. And when the answer of both of those is zero, they just don't have a way to insure you. So in spending a lot of time trying to figure out the insurance thing, it finally and needing to fix the insurance problem, needing to fix um, our space, not having enough shop space, not having any office space, not having any parking space. We wanted to fix this without adding a whole bunch of overhead because we didn't charge for any of our services. That's when we decided, hey, the best option would probably be just start a shop and then have this just a side piece of what the shop does. And so that's what we ended up doing. We went out and hired some people because I'm not a technician. So I hired some techs and hired somebody kind of to manage it. And then I started running the nonprofit while they ran the actual shop side.
Man, that is incredible. I mean, you hit so many different pieces, and just that story alone, I can easily see how that could just change. It really changed the trajectory of your future and your
Oh
in
yeah.
your career, and definitely
It,
changed hers. So, I mean, I'm personally grateful to have even heard the story, and then in terms of like that, you made such a pivotal shift, and I would be as shocked as you are. There's like, oh yeah, and what is the common problem of why you need something done right now? Like everyone wants it done right now, kind of deal.
Everybody's
That's
impatient. Most people don't have an emergency like that. And
mhm.
and her emergency shocked me so much that one of the things I really needed was I needed a kick in the butt to actually make a change from what I was doing. I wasn't happy with the work I was doing. It's why I was started this nonprofit is because I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do something bigger. But one thing that big corporations are pretty good at is golden handcuffs, right? Well, if you leave, you've got a whole bunch of stock options that you're not going to get anymore. You're not
Yeah.
going to get this bonus or whatever. So it was hard to walk away from that, but that was the defining moment for me to say, hey, you know what? I need to change my focus in life, and so I did that. But then it sounds really great that okay, you went out and got a building and you started a shop. But then what happened next was I found out, I thought let's just start a shop, having no experience in the auto repair industry, having never worked at a shop before,
Mhm.
thinking, well, how hard can it be? I'm a relatively smart guy. How hard can it be to run a shop? And I had hired two technicians. I had a big building. The shop, it's a 6,000 square foot shop in that building, plus the office space and everything. So I had a bit of overhead and I realized I had no idea how to run that business. And so then it was pretty cool. I just proceeded to lose a lot of money every month. And
Cool.
yeah, I'd stacked away a bunch of cash
Mhm.
for you know, to be able to leave. But I was watching it. I was losing $5,000-$10,000 a month
Mhm.
on this business because I had no idea what I was doing. And I thought we'd figure it out. And honestly, I think eventually we could have figured it out, but I'm not sure if we would have figured it out before we ran out of cash. Like it's a pretty expensive uh way to learn is by losing money and losing money and losing money. And so I started getting really nervous because I thought, hey, um like if I lose this business, the nonprofit's going to go down with it. Like I'm not going to be able to keep doing the nonprofit after this business. I'm going to lose both of them. And so then I started really getting nervous and stressed and just not know what to do. Like, who do you talk to? Like, who do you ask about how to run a shop better, how to run your business better without walking over to your competitors? And to be honest with you, the only competitors I had that I knew very well weren't doing very good either. So like I didn't want to go ask them. I'm sure they'd give me lots of advice, but I didn't trust any of it because they were struggling as much as was.
Yeah, no, that's so around what time frame is this now that like that you started this shop and you're kind
But
of going through these hurdles?
so I started the shop in the spring of 2018.
Okay, perfect. And so
So
what then helped you go back on the green in terms of like the P&L? Like what shifted?
yeah, so what happened was um I didn't even know where to look. I just figured I needed to figure it out myself, and I didn't know how to do that. There's so many things I was doing wrong. Like any fixing a couple things just wasn't fixing everything. And then what happened was, um, by whatever chance, Facebook decided that I needed to know about some group on the internet, and I never considered that there was a Facebook group for auto shop owners.
Uh-huh.
And so Facebook suggested I join out of the blue it's ASOG, right, the Auto Shop Owners
Yep.
Group, and I joined that group in 2018, and I thought this is the answer. Now all the answers I have are here, and but shortly after joining that, I started seeing all these comments, but there's a lot of conflicting information on there, right? So then I wasn't sure which way to go. And some people started talking about this coaching company called Shop Fix Academy, and specifically about their videos. And somebody posted about that, and they said, "This is awesome. You got to do it." And so I'm like, okay, like, oh, like there was like 50 people that responded and said, "Just do it, just do it, just do it."
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm losing money anyway. So I bought their videos. I didn't utilize the videos very well.
Mhm.
But shortly after buying them, they had a conference. I went to their conference, and at their conference, I decided to join the coaching program. So what happened was I inadvertently stumbled into auto shop coaching. And at that point, I'd never considered that there were shop coaches out there, like that business coaches for shops. I just had never thought about it.
Mhm.
So I joined the Shop Fix and started getting coaching through that. And almost immediately stopped losing money. Like within 2 months, we stopped losing money. Then we started making a little bit money. And then we're able to just start implementing systems and processes and growing and just figuring out how to actually run the business right. And so it was getting that coaching that turned everything around for me. I had no idea. Like I just didn't know all the things I didn't know. And the advantage I had with it is it's not like I had to learn a bunch of new habits. I didn't have any bad habits. I didn't have any habits. I just didn't know what I was doing. And so, I changed everything from our policies, our phone system, our software that we use to manage the shop, our marketing, like everything changed after I started with working with coaching.
That's super cool. And obviously you didn't come from a background of being in the shop at all. And so
No.
like it's all kind of like trial by fire. So like did you feel like I used to step in as an advisor, or did you just like really like use to find the right people and make sure that they were well trained in the right things? Like how did you go about doing any of it?
Well, I really understand the fact that I am not a technician, right? I'm a hobbyist,
Hmm.
and like a really, really good hobbyist is worse than a really bad technician, right? So I get that. So I hired two guys right off the bat that had, 15 plus years of experience. I had technicians. We knew how to fix cars. Like I should say, they knew how to fix cars. Fixing cars right was never an issue for us. The issue was how to run the business. And I had hired somebody else to manage the business that had some experience, but it was very old school experience. His family had owned a business like this 40 years ago, and so he was following that type of mentality. And then I was trying to run the nonprofit. And so once I got into the coaching and I realized what needed to be done, it occurred to me that like I needed to take over on this. And so we switched roles around, and we got rid of that manager that wasn't doing a good job and just didn't know what to do. I stepped into the management slash advisor position, and then I actually hired somebody to do the day to day for the nonprofit, which is what I was doing at that time, was the day to day for the nonprofit. So we hired somebody else to run the nonprofit operations, and I started managing the shop. And that way, the right person who really was, it's a lot different when the person who's managing the shop is the one that has to, pay the bills and sign all the checks. Like you get a little bit more passionate about it.
Yeah, definitely. A little bit more intensity that goes around, and I'm sure it's felt by the proper channels to make sure that things are going about the right way. So that's super cool. And then obviously, yeah. So you're now balancing shop and nonprofit, doing both things. What then helps you decide to like, okay, I think maybe we need more shops to help coincide with greater efforts for the nonprofit, or the kind of, what was the natural thought process that took place there?
So our whole reasoning for starting the shop is to enable the nonprofit, right? So the more we're able to enable or to grow the shop, the more we can grow the nonprofit. And one thing that we found is we get people contacting us from surrounding communities like every day saying, I'm having car problems, or a case manager with this, and I've got these clients that have problems, can you help us? And if they're 50, 100, 200 miles away, we can't help them. Like logistically, it just doesn't work. And so we're getting this, we work with all these partner organizations like the homeless shelters and stuff, and they're telling us that their companion organizations, sister organizations in other communities, they're like, they've got nothing like this. So from the beginning, our goal has been we want to make something that's replicable that we can push into other communities.
Mhm.
So then once we got the shop and the nonprofit that can, partner together really well, then we said, okay, um, we need to build this into something that's more replicable. And so the more we can grow the shop, the more the shop can support the nonprofit, and the more we can get good at building a business that we can push into other communities. So once we started getting close to what we thought was the capacity of that initial shop, we decided we bought another empty building. This because in both cases, our first two shops were just empty buildings that we got our hands on and decided to make them into an auto repair shop. And so we bought a second building and started a shop on the opposite corner of town.
Man, that's so cool. And so then in terms of the, I guess how the auto repair shop kind of feeds the nonprofit, like is there like a certain goal that you have, like, hey, we want to help X amount of cars for free per week, or like what does that look like in terms of like logistically?
So to be clear, the way the shop helps the nonprofit is by primarily providing gobs of resources.
Mhm.
So we've got with all our shops, when we were at my shop on the farm, we had 2 lifts in our shop to be able to work on cars. Now we have 41 across of our shops. So we have, top of the line equipment, tire machines and balancers and alignment machines. There's things that we didn't have access to before. We can program cars. We can, we have all the specialty tools that we never had before. Our shop also pays for all the phones and electricity and insurance and all that stuff. So our nonprofit doesn't have to pay for any of that stuff. The only thing our nonprofit has to pay for is it has a couple of employees to manage the day-to-day operations,
Mhm.
and then it has to buy parts, and we're actually able to get better discounts on parts because our shops are such high volume shops
Yeah.
that we get really good deals on parts for the shops, and they give us that same thing with the nonprofit. So but the goal, our nonprofit goal is we're actually trying to give away, our goal is to give away 3 cars per week right now. And then we try to fix an equal number of cars. So our goal would be to fix for clients 3 cars a week and fix to give away 3 cars per week.
That's great. So I mean, just for those of you that are not as good with numbers, 52 times 3 is 156 cars a
Right.
year, which is amazing. And then plus to fix 3 of those as well, that we're looking at 312 cars a year that you're just
Yeah.
kind of supporting, that is unbelievable. I mean, absolutely. If I had a crowd here, I'll be like, this is a round of applause that should be taking place. So I think you're doing absolutely amazing work.
Yeah.
So
So
thank you.
to date, our nonprofit has given away 454 cars in our community, and we're quickly approaching 1,000 cars repaired for people. I don't remember the exact number on that, but we're between 950 and 1,000 cars that we've actually repaired for people in our community. So it has been, we do quite a bit of volume, but we're just trying to turn up because the reality is we still are turning away about half of the requests we get for both donations and car repairs. Just the amount of need is overwhelming, and so there's still a lot more opportunity for us to be able to help more, even
Yeah,
just
I
in the
never would have
community.
imagined there's just that. So in terms of like on the nonprofit side, like how are they just hearing about you naturally because now you've supported so many, and so people like these case managers know like, oh yeah, we need to reach out to Fix It Forward Ministry because they'll be able to help with this, or like how like what are the avenues that are taking place here?
This is really key to how we operate our business and how you can sustainably give away 2, 3 cars a week.
Mhm.
Is we don't give or we don't work directly with the clients that need a car. they have to have a case manager refer it to us at one of our partner organizations. And so we've partnered with over 40 organizations in our community. So we partner with all of the homeless shelters. We've got a shelter focused for women, a shelter focused for men, a shelter for family, like all these different types of shelters. We work with them. We work with veterans organizations. We work with people coming out of the jail systems. We work with rehab organizations. We work with mental health organizations. We work with housing and just general social services. So all of these different organizations that we're working with, we have them identify for us people that are um, are in need, but not just people are in need, but what we ask them is, one, it has to be a person who can realistically have a car, right? So, do they have a driver's license? This is a question you have to ask because a lot of places will refer people who don't even have a driver's license.
Yeah.
Do they have the ability to pay for insurance and gas? Because if they don't, they're going to lose the car right away anyway. It's just going to become a liability for them. And then our other question that we really focus on is this car going to be life-changing for them? And we want to give somebody a car that we don't want to give somebody a car so they can go to bingo on Tuesday nights. We want to give somebody a car so that they can get that job and get out of the shelter and become self-sustaining. And so that's really what we're looking for. And we have all these different partners that we've got. We sat down with them, explained the situation, what we're looking for, and then they refer to us people that fit our criteria.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so, and it sounds like you guys get how many calls a day that are you, and this is also is it just within Fargo and within, say,
Yeah, it's
5 mile
basically
radius of Fargo? Like how wide a range are we talking about here?
we're just within the Fargo Moorhead community and
Mhm.
just surrounding areas. So anything more than like 20 miles out of town just doesn't make sense for us. So, but one thing that we've done is because our focus is on growth, we've really worked on trying to streamline all these processes. So when you ask how many phone calls do we get a day, it's really not that many because we have software to manage this. And so this is one of the advantages of coming out of Microsoft is I've got a lot of friends who work in the software industry.
Yeah.
And so we actually wrote custom software so that it tracks what all our requests are. We can say all the requests come in through a portal. So all these uh, partners that we have, they actually can go to our web portal, they enter all the information in, then we can look at that, say, yes, we can or can't do it, approve or decline the request. And then that goes into our queue. And then we just start knocking them out in order. So we don't have to spend a lot of time entering data. At one point in time, they'd email us a form or they'd call us and we'd have to enter all this data. All that stuff is streamlined. And again, that's one of the things that we're trying to do is build software and build systems so that we can give away cars. Even if you're not giving away 3 cars a week, if you're giving away a car a month, can we make the overhead of that as light as possible so that you can easily sustain something like that instead of just getting overrun? A lot
Yeah.
of people I talk to give away cars and kind of the recommended way of doing this, if you go to like Napa Care or something like that, is to put something out on Facebook and or on social media or on your even a sign up on your door that says we're taking applications for do you know anybody who needs a car, and then you end up getting dozens of applications and you have to read through all those and you have to try and pick out the best one and determine are they really in need or do they really just are they really good at writing stories, right? We don't know that. And so how do you vet these people? It's very hard. It's a lot of work. It takes hours and hours and it's overwhelming. And it's frustrating too, because if you give a car to the wrong person, then you're frustrated if you find out after the fact, or if you aren't able to give, there's 3 people that you want to help on this list and you're only able to give one. And so then you've got this conscience of what about these other people I couldn't help? Doing it the way of having a case manager is much, much easier. The other advantage of it, and this is probably the bigger piece of it, is the the people that can't afford to fix their car, like that is not the root of their problem, right? The car isn't what caused them to their whole life to fall apart. Something else has gotten, has happened to them, or maybe it's a mental health issue, or maybe it's a domestic dispute issue, or it's an injury or something like that that's caused them to not be able to afford to fix their car. And then when they lose the car, then everything else falls apart. And so What we do is by forcing them to work with a case manager, that case manager can work with them on all the other issues that they might have pending. They're going to make sure that their kids have clothing. They're going to make sure that they've got stable housing. They're going to make sure that they've got food, right? And that they're getting the education or whatever else that they need to be able to get ahead in life. Otherwise, we'll just keep fixing cars for them for free for eternity, and nothing's going to change in the situation.
Yeah, no, that man. The more I hear about it, it makes me want to start a nonprofit. It's like, oh my goodness, how much change that you're able to affect and able to make. I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm curious in terms of like the individuals that then like obviously the car needs to go into the shop, and like there's regular cars that are also going in and out of the shop that need fixing. So how does certain time get dedicated out to be like, yep, this lift or this time is like when, yep, this is when a nonprofit one is coming through, and this is when it needs to be finished, when it's not completely tied into like like the auto repair
Right.
side of the business. How does that balance sort of work?
So one of the things that we found is really key for growth with shops is proper utilization of your space, right? And we found that the more volume we can do in our shops, the more profitable they can be. The more profitable they are, the more we can support our nonprofit and the more we can grow.
Mhm.
So taking up lift space is very expensive.
Yep.
And we don't want to do that. So you're exactly right. Managing that is very difficult. What we've done is say the nonprofit has full access to the shop outside of business hours. So
Mm.
the nonprofit cars are not being worked on at the same time as the regular shop is operating. And so it actually comes in, it works on evenings and weekends and uses the same facility, just not at that time. And there's actually some mornings that will even use it if it's before the shop's open. If we've got a tech that maybe shows up for work at 9 and the nonprofit really needs to get something done during the week, they can bring it in. They just have to have that bay back open again by 9. It doesn't happen frequently, but so we make sure that we get full shop utilization of those bays during the weekdays, and then we just do everything after hours or outside of normal business hours.
Oh, very interesting. And so these technicians then are they also technically doing like charitable work because they're just kind of bought into the mission, or is it just nope, you also pay them for the excess hours that they're doing technically outside of the normal business hours? Like how does that kind of balance sort of work?
So our repairs done for the nonprofit are done by primarily by volunteers. And so what we do is like we'll have a Saturday morning, and this is how we started from the beginning. We have a Saturday morning volunteer day, and we'll bring in a bunch of volunteers to the shop. We'll have a bunch of cars and the parts, it's already diagnosed, the parts are ready. That's what our employees are doing, right? Is we've got a couple people on staff that they look the cars over, they make sure they're worth fixing, the donated cars, they diagnose the problems, they order all the parts. So then we have people come in and groups of people come in, and then we just fix a whole bunch of parts. And our nonprofit doesn't do hard jobs, right? They're not doing motor swaps. They're not doing trannies. They're not doing hard electronic diagnostics. That stuff just isn't going to happen in a nonprofit. It doesn't make sense to invest that much into any one car. They're doing brakes. They're doing CV shafts. They're doing batteries and starters, tires. They're doing a lot of the simple work. And so what we do is we bring in a bunch of volunteers. Some of those volunteers are our technicians, right? Our technicians love what we do. They show up on weekends. They help out. Some of those volunteers are retired technicians or technicians from other shops in town. Some of those volunteers are just hobbyists like myself that they're not as efficient at fixing a car, but they can do brakes. They do their own brakes all the time. They can change oil. We bring them in and we put them in, groups. We'll have multiple people working on a car, and then we'll able to get that work done with all free labor. And that because that's one of the big expenses for auto repair is labor. And so we're able to knock that labor out. There are a few cases where, the two guys that we have that manage all the cars coming in and out are both technicians. So they have that background experience. There are a few cases where we might have a car that really is worth having a more in-depth repair done. And they might do that, that's one of those things that they might do before 9 o'clock in the morning or something like that. They will fix on the rare occasion that we have something that needs that. But we also utilize some of our partnerships with the local schools to get a lot of that type of work done too.
Man, this is so cool. And so I guess yeah, there's volunteers, there's people that come across like technically almost like competing shops in a sense will come and do this service work. Um, And I think in a sense, it also works as training for a lot of these individuals and like just fine tuning their own skills as a technician and feeling that, and no one ever feels bad from doing service. Like not a single person in the entire world will ever feel bad about doing service. And I'll go to the end and battle anyone that says otherwise, because like doing service gives you one of the most warm feelings that you can possibly receive, and I think
It's one of the
yeah
most rewarding things you can do.
yeah.
And we find we get a lot of volunteer retention because of that. They just really enjoy being able to give back. They also, for our volunteers that are hobbyists, they learn a lot coming into the
Mm.
shop. They get to learn what real tools that auto repair shops use, and they get to learn from real technicians. And so they really enjoy that. It's a great learning opportunity. But where the real heavy learning opportunity comes that we get to participate in is we work with a lot of local schools. So we've got 2 high schools in our community that have auto repair programs, and we've got 2 colleges, one of them in our community and one of them about 45 minutes away, that have auto tech programs. And
Mhm.
so we actually bring, well, with the high schools, we bring cars to them for them to work on. And so we'll take our cars, they'll tell us, kind of work that they want done. Oh, we're doing a section on brakes. So we'll bring over a couple cars that have brake problems. We have pre-diagnosed it, we've pre-bought the parts, and then they can go sit there and work on it. And the schools love it because the students now get to work on real cars that they know are going to be out on the road, not just taking the same part, removing the same alternator and putting it back on that happens every semester for the last
Yep.
20 years. So they get to actually do real work. They know it's making a difference and it gets them more passionate about auto repair. The
Mhm.
other thing that works really good is we don't have a timeline on these donated cars, so we can give it to the school. And if they get it done in a week, that's great. If it takes them 3 months, that's okay. Because so they don't have that when they work on, if they work on a student's car, well, then they have this timeline that they have to get the car done. And so
Mhm.
they really like working on our cars. The other piece of it is we work with the tech schools, and not only do we send cars to the tech schools, so they might say, hey, we're doing a transmission course. Do you have a car with a bad transmission or bad differential, whatever they're working on?
Yep.
We send cars over with that problem. They work at their location, but they also bring groups of students to our shops, and those students to have a feel of what it's like to work in a real shop and in a real functioning shop on real cars, and it gives them that experience, and so it works both ways on that.
Have you ever hired like straight out of there as well?
We haven't yet.
Oh,
We haven't
okay.
hired any of the students. Uh, Technically, we do have at least one student that works for us that did work at the tech school before, but we haven't hired any of the students coming out of tech schools yet.
Well, but I was just curious to see if we do like a natural funnel in a sense as well, in
It
terms of like, yeah.
it is a really good funnel. What it also has shown us is, which students are motivated and which ones aren't. And
Mm.
so we get to really judge the students and see where they're at. The one thing that we found right now is by the time we meet a lot of students, they've already got job offers from typically it's the local dealerships.
Yep.
Uh, and a lot of them work part-time evenings at the dealerships, and we're not open evenings. So
Yeah.
that's okay. I think it's a good way for them to get some experience in the industry, and then they can come work with us after they've spent a few years here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Man, I absolutely love your story. I think it's so unique, but it also is making such a big impact on your community. Have you ever thought about expanding out? It sounds like you even get requests well outside community in terms of like what you
Oh,
typically service. So, are there thoughts of like how do we expand to possibly help more?
absolutely. So we get weekly requests from people all over the United States. Like because of our marketing that we do, when you search for stuff like this, people find us, and we get a lot of requests that we just absolutely couldn't do. But our goal is to be able to make as big of an impact as possible, and by helping the most people with transportation problems. And so we've got a few different ways that we're trying to do that. One is keep growing our shops so we can help more people. The more we grow the shop, the more we can help people. The other is, as we're growing the shop, get really, really good at starting new shops. And we talked about in 2020, we started right in the middle of COVID. We started our second shop from scratch.
Mhm.
Um, we got that one spinning up. And then we bought it in 2023 or 2022, excuse me. We bought a third shop. And then in 2023, we bought a fourth shop, and we're getting very good at buying shops that are not doing very well and in quadrupling their output in a very short period of time.
Mm.
And by perfecting that, we're going to then move out into other surrounding communities and try and just expand out into these other communities. So that's one of the ways that so we do fully have plans of moving into a lot of the surrounding communities and expanding beyond where we are right now. But the other thing that we really like doing is trying to enable other shop owners in different parts of the world to do something similar like this. So if we can teach people ways to do it, we built our software so that we'll be able to uh, expand it so other people can use our software to have built-in systems and processes and take that overhead out. If we can, encourage other people to start doing this, we can make an even bigger impact.
Yeah, that'd be super cool to just see kind of this flourish nationwide, helping tons of different communities. Obviously, I mean, there's some areas that's just very hard, just middle of nowhere or anything like that.
Right.
But I mean, there's
There's
this
needy
problem is
people
not
in
it's
every.
not focused on just in Fargo. This is obviously
Right.
rampant across the world, and so like it definitely could be an amazing thing to be able to help and influence. And like for those that are maybe curious, like what sort of revenue number, if you don't mind sharing, what sort of revenue numbers are your four shops now doing?
We did across the four shops, we did 9.2 million last year.
Yeah.
But that's only like our newest shop we bought in the middle of July, and we didn't have any team. We didn't hire the staff from the shop. So that shop still did over $1 million in less than 6 months of being open. So that they'll solidly be a $2.5 to $3 million a year shop, but with a full year. So we did 9.2 million last year. And next year, if we just keep chugging like we are, we'll be between 11 and 12 million last year because we're doing right around $1 million a month right now.
And they're definitely no joke in terms of the numbers that you're able to accomplish. Those are something that, again, didn't come from an auto repair background and at all. It's kind of it just kind of naturally happened based on hobbies. So I mean, for those of you out there, like it doesn't. I think some people put their like, oh, my experience is different than your experience, and so it's much more difficult. And like, no, like if you really put some effort behind it, and then I think we didn't dig too deep into it, but like get coaching of any kind, like find
Right.
a coach to help support you, it can make a world of a difference. And so, like just tap into coaching just a little bit. Well, what do you think was kind of the most profound thing that you learned when you got a coach versus when you didn't?
The big thing was I was able, like this was super huge. I was able to put in a bunch of systems and processes in place that work for a business that was 20 times my size.
Mm,
So normally, if you develop your own system, and this is, I came up with a system that works, and I don't care if it's for checking in cars or if it whatever piece that might be. Um, you're going to outgrow that because it works for what you're at. And then you're going to grow, 20%, 50%. And now that doesn't work. It all falls apart. You got to redesign the system. By using systems that already worked for shops that were drastically bigger than mine, we just never hit that ceiling. So we were able to we put the systems in place when we were small and didn't need them. And then we were able to grow and grow and grow. The other key thing I felt with the coaching that I got was, my coach was a shop owner. Like well is um he knows exactly what I'm going through. And so having a coach that owns shops and is dealing with the same issues and just understands, I think is super valuable. It just, because when you go through and you say, hey, I've got this problem, if it's somebody that's teaching you that's just, they're trying to teach you out of the book, that's not the same as somebody saying, I had the same problem. I had to fire a guy for that 2 months ago. Because
mm.
we're all my shops aren't perfect. We've all got problems and we're all working through them. But when your coach can say, I'm there, I'm doing that, I think that's super valuable.
Yes, oh man, definitely. I think a coach in anything, I think just it's important for people to swallow their pride a little bit and know that there are people out there that know a little bit more, and that's okay. Like, and you
Right.
might as well pick their brain and learn from them so you can get at that level. And maybe sometimes, yes, they're like, well, what if I'm bigger than where my coach is at? Okay, then maybe it's time to find a new coach that maybe is one step above, and find that there's always someone else that can help get you to the next level if you want to get there. And some people are
Right.
okay with where they're
Well,
at too.
And even if you're bigger than your coach, I mean, if you think about it, all athletes, every professional athlete has a coach, right?
Mhm.
Every professional athlete is better at their sport than the coach is. That doesn't mean the coach isn't providing value, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't be a coach anymore. And so I just sit there and I look at all these professional athletes saying they all have at least one coach, sometimes three, four, five coaches if they're
Mhm.
really good, because they take their career really seriously. And if we take our career seriously and really want to reach our full potential, why don't we have a coach that's doing the same thing with us?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely a no-brainer. Well, Matt, this has been an absolutely amazing podcast. I'm very appreciative for you coming on and sharing your very unique story. And I hope this sets a fire in some people to like, hey, maybe like, yes, you don't have to go out of your way and start a nonprofit right now, today. If you do, amazing, please do. But maybe start small. Like, how do I give away my first car? Like,
Right?
how do I go about doing that and creating that process?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
do I get how do I get two? And it's kind of this
You know,
helping that snowball. And I think that the
is
rest will take care of itself.
you don't even have to give away your first car. You can go to the local homeless shelter and say, "Hey, do you guys have a van that used to haul people around? I'll fix it for you." Right? They have a very limited budget, and that's a great way to get involved is go to a local nonprofit and say, "Hey, can I help support your vehicles that you already have? I'm just going to do some maintenance on them for you for free. Or maybe if you can't afford that, I'm going to do some maintenance on them for cost of parts, just because I want to help what you're doing." And that's going to get you involved in that community. It's going to help you meet people. It's going to help you be able to give back in a way that you're giving back in a huge way, because if they're going to spend $100 on parts, that job would have cost them $400 going through the shop normally. So you just saved them, three-fourths of the cost of that repair. And so it's a big difference to them, and it can help you get involved and get a taste for it. And there's no reason not to start doing that today.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, Matt, for those that maybe want to pick your brain a little bit more, there's like maybe the ins and outs of the nonprofit and the processes that you kind of set in
Right?
place to make both work. Like, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Email is always the best way to get a hold of me. So my email is Matt, Matt, at fixitforwardautocare.com. So it's why I love helping people start nonprofits. I truly believe that people who own or run auto repair shops are in a uniquely positioned to be able to help people. Like, how to fix cars, what cars make sense to repair or not. What you have so much knowledge and skill to be able to help people in a way that they're really struggling. And transportation can be an absolute game changer. So I love encouraging anybody to get involved with this, who has any inclination to it. So yeah, shoot me an email and I'd love to talk.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, yes, thank you again all for watching our podcast this week. If you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so. We'll talk again soon. Kelsey Lift, Auto Marketing. See you guys later.